It is ruled that speculative investors in real estate projects cannot use the insolvency proceedings under IBC to recover their money.
That if people don't make money around the table, they won't sit at the table. Profit is not a bad thing. It is necessary.
The Reserve Bank of India recently concluded a deal for a 4.2-acre parcel in Nariman Point in Mumbai for a sum of 3,472 crores. This has been one of the biggest land deals we've seen in Mumbai ever.
For better or for worse, they did not end up going the
Private.
the auction route.
The White House's recent decision to change the H1B visa program.
H1B visa has helped Indians a lot. Suddenly putting a huge entry barrier on that, now that they can't, who is going to cash in on it?
So we have to become more and more competitive.
Welcome back to another episode of the News Roundup with Prop News Time. Here we sit down with industry experts to discuss the latest events and how they're shaping the real estate sector. With me today is Mr. Balaji Rao and Mr. Abhay Rao. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Thanks.
So I'd like to begin with talking about the Supreme Court's latest judgment. It has ruled that speculative investors in real estate projects cannot use the insolvency proceedings under IBC to recover their money. The verdict has also reiterated that insolvency proceedings should be restricted or confined to specific projects and not the entire corporate entity. I'd like to begin with asking you, what are your thoughts on the judgment?
As usual, I would like to give it more color and context before we come to the judgment per se.
Yes.
Typically, under IBC, I think real estate cases are almost about 20-21% of the cases are real estate project related.
Right.
Correct.
And they do impact a lot of people as home buyers get stranded whenever it is impacted. So there have been quite a few changes made in the IBC over the years as to how to handle them, to include them as, creditors, what sort of creditors are they, and then where do they stand in line.
Yes.
So the two welcome changes which you're talking about out here is one, don't look at a company consolidated, look at it project-wise, because if a particular project is sinking, it should not bring the other projects down also.
Right.
Let the other projects survive and let this project let's figure out first, how do we salvage this project?
Yeah.
Which is a very good, I think, very practical and very commonsensical, actually.
Right.
The second one which Supreme Court has done is to talk about speculative investors vis-a-vis home buyers.
Right.
Now, this, of course, it has used in its wisdom the various factors that go into agreements like buyback clauses and whether they want to really live in it or whether they want to just sell it back or things like how they are paying up for it, whether they're booking in bulk. So all these factors which are giving them an indication, this one is institutional or this one is an investor and this one is an actual home buyer.
Right.
There is no harm in showing a difference between the two. Mm-hmm. But what I would like to introduce out here is from a real estate perspective, do speculative buyers have any use or are they absolutely useless?
Right.
Like I will draw an analogy. It's like saying, does a stock market speculator and a short-term investor, does he have any use? Or should we have only long-term investors in stock markets? You understand?
Yeah.
It's a very tricky question.
Yeah.
The short-term investor, the day trader also has a use. The person who does futures and options also has a use.
Right.
Because they bring about liquidity. They bring about price discovery.
Right.
They sharpen the whole focus on that particular script to what it should be.
Yeah.
Okay. So just because they are speculators or short-term investors, it doesn't mean they don't have any economic role to play.
Right.
You understand?
Yes.
So similarly, in real estate, the biggest problem for real estate is how does the plane take off, the project take off?
Right.
There is a one engine which is the equity capital, but it can only be one engine.
Correct.
There is a second engine which is maybe the sales which they do. Okay.
Right.
And there's a third engine, which is the debt which they incur. Okay. Now the question comes in when the sales cannot take place immediately in the same way because nobody wants to overload debt. If you overload debt, also you can come down.
Right.
It won't take off.
Yeah.
If you have too much of capital, then you don't get a return on capital, which
Right.
sometimes people forget. I
Yeah.
will not do a business if it gives me a return of 10%. Na?
Correct.
I might as well put my money in a fixed deposit or GSEC and sit tight. Why should I go through all the thing?
Yes.
So it cannot be overloaded with too much capital. It cannot be overloaded with too much debt. So typically a project has to be very successful, like some people's projects are,
Yeah.
like the big developers, where people line up and take my thing.
Yes.
Perfect.
Yeah.
But when you have thousands of developers,
Yeah.
everyone's project is not so. Na? There's from
Correct.
top to bottom, there's quite a bit of a difference.
Yes.
So they have to depend upon somebody who will buffer that for them. Na? Till my actual buyer comes, because he might want to see the building up, he might want to see it topped up. That means the whole civil
Correct.
structure ready. So till that time, who is holding my third engine?
Correct.
That's when the bulk investor comes in. He says, I'm much better risk taker. I'm a much better risk assessor. So I will come and give you the money for this 40 flats or 30 flats.
Right.
Start the project,
Yeah.
get it up, take it
Yeah.
off. And then I will come out because he also wants his return.
Correct.
Correct? So now what happens is you're telling that guy that now if for whatever reason the project suffers and gets grounded, can't take off, are you really a creditor? Because for being a speculative buyer,
Right.
you're not a home buyer. This is something which needs to be analyzed and thought about. Because if he thinks that he's not a home buyer and he doesn't have much protection, not that the Supreme Court is saying there's no protection,
Right.
they're just putting him behind.
Yeah.
Then he will also wonder, is it worth it? The risk becomes higher for him to take.
Right.
You understand? Any government, any body has to understand that if people don't make money around the table, they won't sit at the table.
Right.
You know, and so we have this overarching objective that nobody should make money.
Yes.
In fact, in one of the Supreme Court judgments, they said profit is not a bad thing. It is necessary. Otherwise,
Yeah.
how does enterprise work?
Correct.
So that profit need not only be for a manufacturer, even a trader needs a profit, no? Because he's buffering. You have an excess potato crop, he goes and puts it in the cold storage, he pays for it.
Right.
Now, when he starts taking it out at a higher price, everybody points the finger at him and says he's profiteering.
Yeah.
But if he wasn't there, the potato crop would have been destroyed.
There would be scarcity, and then there would be, yeah.
So people forget these nuances. We have to see, it is still too early to say whether it will impact the market and the investors. I hope it won't.
Right.
I hope they do feel that they are also there. Maybe, albeit, I don't think they'll mind if they're behind a home buyer, but they should also be considered and construed as somebody critical to a project's success,
Understood.
and not be construed that they are really not so critical. That I would feel is being a bit harsh on them, because I think they are also putting their hard-earned money
Yeah.
into it, and that is their enterprise.
Correct.
That's how they make their money.
Yeah.
So that's my take on it.
All right.
See, in this case, it's actually the Supreme Court's come out with this kind of a law to basically distinguish between the genuine home buyer and the speculative investor. Now here they have taken more into account the speculative part than the investor part. So just like we were saying, an equity market has to have the day trader as well as the long-term investor, the AUMs and your derivatives guys who do the futures and
Correct.
exchange. So similarly, real estate also will always have different stakeholders. Every builder will not just be raising money from a bank or from one particular, or putting their own money. They will be taking it from various places. Now the problem became where they felt the end goal was not aligned for the speculative investor and the home buyer. The home buyer was more interested in the building getting completed, one way or other, because that he wants to live there. He
Right.
wants to take possession of that house. The speculative investor did not really care about that bit so much, as long as one way or another they got their return.
Right.
Which is why the two agreements also are completely different: a regular buyer agreement and a investor agreement. So that to that extent, they felt that this distinction was needed. Now both of them can still approach RERA when there's a stalled project or an issue.
Yes.
However, when it comes to the insolvency part of it, they want to create this distinction
Yes.
where they are saying, ki, hey, yes, you guys have invested in this, but you all are also the speculative investors. You all are in here to make a profit, and just cause it didn't work, why should y'all be given preference over the genuine home buyer, or why should you all be ahead of the
Right.
line just because you have put in more?
But Abhay,
Because it's kind of becomes like the whole whether it's a good thing to bail out. It's literally a bailout situation at a much smaller scale here, where you're
Right.
bailing out a particular real estate project. Now, should
but
it
just
be
for a
bailed out
debate
or
or
not?
discussion about what you're saying, then what is the difference between a banker when he gives a loan to a project? He's also taking a risk. He's also giving and he's interested in the return. And he's the first guy who drags the project into IBC to say, I want my money back with my return. No?
Right.
Isn't it? So it's only a structuring. He gives it as a loan.
One
Somebody
gives it
says,
as debt, one gives it as equity, so it becomes
he
a
doesn't
little
give it as an
different, no?
equity. He gives it as a buyer. He's taking an advance purchase.
Correct,
He's
but it is
taking
a
as a bulk buy.
speculative.
That's
Exactly,
all.
but it still comes out for the builder. It is equity, right?
See,
It is not debt. It
No,
is
no.
equity.
No,
It is-
it comes in as a revenue, truth be told. Okay. So the revenue comes in for him now because he's advancing the revenue.
Correct.
Isn't he? He's the first
Correct.
revenue
So it's an
giver.
advance revenue, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, there might be a buyback clause. The builder might put up his hand and say, look, I can't buy it back from you. You sell it in the market and you might not get the desired return. That's between them, which even the Supreme Court agrees can become a civil suit.
Correct.
You know,
Correct.
because there is
Yeah.
a civil contract between them.
Correct.
But when you say that he is giving money in any case, whether I give money as a buyer, whether I give money as an investor, or whether I give money to you as a lender, anybody who is giving money says, I want my money back.
Correct.
So he is aligned more, as you rightly say, with a banker to say, I want my money rather than the flat. And the genuine home buyer says, I want a flat. I might not need my money. But in case the flat doesn't come, I want my money. He's not somebody who says, I only want a flat at whatever cost.
No.
Yeah.
One way or another, you want to recover what you've put in.
Correct.
Well-
So the question of who is ahead and who is down, and to think that, see, Supreme Court is going from a socialistic point of view, maybe, to say that the home buying is a fundamental right under Article 21.
Yes.
It is because
So
of that.
because
Exactly.
of that, if somebody says I'm buying it for my home,
Yeah.
but
They did it because of Article 21 only.
correct?
You're right. That
but
is
think
the
about
basis
it.
of
If
it.
suppose I am a bulk buyer who says I am buying it to make it into student housing, senior living, co-living, I rent it out. Am I not giving an economic activity? Does everybody buy a house? Some people even rent it out, no? So then why would I want to buy in bulk
Fair.
today because I'm getting it at a good price and I want to rent it out? That guy say that no, you are not in the same way as a genuine home buyer who wants to stay. He's creating thing maybe for students. How do you distinguish it?
True, it's very difficult to distinguish. That's why even when they're just assuming people who bought multiple houses are actually speculative investors, that need not be the case.
Because-
it could be a joint family living there. It could be multiple people.
I just feel it's a slippery slope. Like you were talking about AIFs. When AIFs lend money, they lend money at higher rates of interest than a bank does for construction financing. We all know that.
Right.
So can you say an AIF lending money at 20% should not be an actual lender as compared to a guy who's lent money as construction finance at 12%? Because this guy is more genuine, he's a public sector bank, he's given me money at 12%, but let's give his money back. And this AIF guy is just,
He's
Well, I
playing
mean-
the market.
yeah, that's
But
not.
basically, that is what the Supreme Court has
No.
distinguished it as. That's what I'm saying. From what
Yeah.
I have read of the judgment, that's what I could understand. They've
So-
made that very clear distinction,
So the court
for the
has
first time.
has said that alone in itself, so just one person owning multiple flats is not indication enough that they're a speculative buyer. They've put down a bunch of different aspects, whether it is the nature of the contract, the demand of high returns, owning multiple units, and the intention to take possession. If this person has moved to court,
but what I am trying to say is, you are trying to say, and I'm not disputing their wisdom in this, but because they would be more learned than us, but I'm just trying to get my head wrapped around this to understand what the court is saying. Is you're saying, if I'm a genuine home buyer, I should be given a higher priority than somebody who says, I want to buy in bulk with a return expectation, or somebody who says, I want to lend. See, the IBC way it should have been formed is who stands first and who stands last.
Right.
Correct.
So the question comes, who has a security, who is unsecured, who is not secured. Well, it is nothing to do with the return expectation.
Correct.
That the guy who has the least expectation will be on the front, the guy with the maximum expectation to line ka piche khade raho.
Yeah.
You understand? It has to be seen as per who has the security, who has the collateral, where do you stand, how do I liquidate it. There are funds which are like Swami Fund that have done an exemplary job in trying to complete projects, which is fair enough. You can say that we will get in funds and you can complete a project, a genuine home buyer will get it and the bulk buyer will get whatever it is.
The government steps in and they say, yes, we will make up.
I think this will have to be played out a little bit more before we can figure it out as to what is a speculative, who is a speculative buyer. And most probably in India, being India, the speculative buyer will restructure his agreement to look like a genuine home buyer.
Yes.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
True. But the other reason I think speculative buyers came under a little bit of the spotlight and flack a little bit to some extent was also because they felt that that's another reason for the pricing going unnecessarily high and creating a little bit of a bubble effect, on the maintaining those high prices, because they felt because by the time the first genuine buyer is buying it, it's already changed ownership hands 2-3 times and everyone has made money on it, so the price has gone up by a good 50%.
Yeah, but you see, Abhay, this is again another fallacy between speculators, investors and traders, you understand? Because if that speculator doesn't make that money, actually he steadies the market, he stabilizes the market. If he doesn't make it, then in a particular year there would have been a steep fall.
True.
Right.
Your thinking is doing a steep increase. He doesn't. He tries to stabilize the market. He tries to take his things at a slight discount rather than let the market go into a free fall. Because he knows that he can, when he buys his product, whether it's a potato or a house, at a slightly discount, he will again bring it back to the market price plus a little bit and do it. He doesn't think he'll do it at 3x. I'm not talking about hoarding and profiteering. That's a very different market. We are not, that's illegal and that's completely different.
And in real estate,
so that is why I'm saying whether a bulk buyer should be considered as a hoarder is a very different interpretation. Because that hoarding guy, he says in a regular market also, I will create an artificial scarcity. I'll squeeze the market and then I will release it at a higher price.
Right.
But in real estate, you can't be that because it's so dispersed, the market. There's nobody who can capture a market in real estate, contrary to what many people think. It's impossible that I can capture the market and, push buyers to come in and pay me 2x. No way. You understand? So we are not discussing hoarding and this thing. We are discussing more a genuine person who sticks to the fluctuation. So when he tries to stabilize it, just like what the derivatives, as you said, the hedge funds do, F&Os do, they try to stabilize the market so that there are no wide fluctuations.
Right. On to the next topic. The Reserve Bank of India recently concluded a deal for a 4.2-acre parcel in Nariman Point in Mumbai. They took this parcel of land on a 99-year lease contract from the Mumbai Metro Rail Corporation for a sum of 3,472 crores. This has been one of the biggest land deals we've seen in Mumbai ever. I'd like to start with asking you what your thoughts are on the deal.
It's actually a very good deal and a big move because this is the first time such a huge land parcel deal has occurred in the city, and to the type of deal as well, being two government entities doing
Right.
a deal at such a high value is quite unique to that extent. This has kind of two implications, I feel. One, it points to Nariman Point still being a important commercial hub of the city,
Right.
and while everything has been slowly moving towards different parts, including BKC being the upcoming big hub, this showcases that Nariman Point still holds that importance and value, and it allows RBI a chance to actually create a big headquarters in one centralized place and work a little bit more efficiently.
Right.
Two, on the metro side, it allows them to not only increase their cash flow to complete their ongoing project, but it also helps them cover up some of their debt, especially the one that we owe to Japan, who's invested into this project. So to that extent, on both those fronts, it's a very unique deal that has been done and should hopefully start unlocking more land parcels in and around the cities. When people say ki, hey, one can, and this is done in the most non-complicated manner because for better or for worse, they did not end up going the
Private way.
the auction route that they were
Yeah.
supposed to.
So in 2024, they had actually set a reserve price for 5,173 crores. But in January, when the RBI expressed interest, MMRCL cancelled the tender and negotiated directly with the RBI. There have been some opposition views about it being unfair that when the reserve price was set at 5,000 crores, the deal has taken place now for considerably lesser. What are your thoughts on that?
See, to take a step back, first we have to understand why Reserve Bank wants to be in Nariman Point. Because typically most of the banks have been shifted to the financial district in BKC,
Right.
G block.
Correct.
Now, of course, RBI can say that, look, there is no land out there for me to take. We don't know for sure whether they have tried. Second, at the same time, right now, there is also a tender going on by the railways in Bandra East, next to the highway,
Yeah.
which is a huge 10-acre parcel almost, with also, I think, almost a 5,000 crore
Yes.
valuation. So you wonder as to why somebody wants to, because the whole idea was to decongest Nariman Point from a traffic, from a security, from a safety. That's why even Bombay High Court in its expansion is moving to Bandra.
Correct.
RBI was actually at one time was mooted to move to New Bombay, which never happened. Fair enough, because it was not well infrastructured at that
Correct.
point. So the question of whether you want to revive Nariman Point back as a CBD, and that is why you're doing this, and RBI wants to remain there only and not move anywhere, that might be one idea. So it's a very interesting thing. What I'm trying to tell you from a real estate perspective is very interesting. That suddenly RBI, and this I think was almost about 1.6 million square feet development.
Yeah.
So RBI wanting the large facility to be put there and to remain in Nariman Point
Yeah.
is a sort of an interesting perspective, whereas most others are vacating. Okay, but so be it. For whatever wisdom they have, they want to be there. That's one. Two is the price, as you said. It's very difficult to price these things because you're talking about a price fluctuating from 25,000 to 30,000 per square foot
Yeah.
of FSI,
Yeah.
which is not bad, which is not good, which can be. So naturally, you wonder how is the price discovered?
Correct.
Maybe was it valued? Was it auctioned? Why was it at auction? Why was it given as a private sort of a arrangement? And that's why the controversies arise,
Yes.
even though it's between two government departments.
Yeah.
Because it's not necessary to say that between two government departments, that's why there is no corruption. I agree, there's no corruption.
Right.
But sometimes somebody might think also that maybe somebody else might have also wanted that place
Correct. Yeah.
and wanted it for a particular reason, or it would have been better for them to have been there, or whatever it is. So, why only these people is again a question mark. Because whether it's a bank or a financial institution or some other administrative authority might have wanted it also and
Right.
might have been willing to pay more for it.
Right.
So naturally it gives rise to a rumor, gossips, all sorts of thoughts as to why is it being privately placed. We don't know the reason unless the government clarifies
Yeah.
as to why it didn't go through a natural public auction
Right.
and tendering process. So it's an interesting development all in all. One, the resurgence of Nariman Point coming back as a CBD.
Right.
Maybe it is due to the coastal road. Maybe it is due to the, your new airport being that side and being well connected through the Eastern Freeway, Atal Setu and to the. So whichever way, or maybe it is just inertia for an institution to move out of a known area
Correct.
and they want to be there
Yeah.
and they give it high preference. That's one. Two, establishing a sort of a benchmark for what land should be in that area,
Correct.
so that it gives an idea for future tenders to have happened, because there might be port land tomorrow out there, there
Yeah.
might be defense land, there might be railways land, to get to have a benchmark. So all these come into play, but is it necessitated? Yes, maybe Metro Rail needs that money for expansion and is perfect if you want. In fact, I personally feel whichever public government or undertaking has that sort of a requirement should
Lease out their land.
should
Yeah.
lease out
Yeah.
or sell out their land and bring in the money for the capex. It's perfectly all right. So overall, the thing seems to be okay.
Yeah.
It is kosher, but people wonder, could you have actually got 5,000 crores? It would have been interesting to know if
True,
you had
yeah.
done it. Because any private sort of arrangement always raises eyebrows.
Right.
The other reason why there's been a little bit of speculation on the price and the fact that they did it at a perceived loss compared to what they might have gotten in the open market was also the fact that the offices and all that were cleared from there. A lot of them were all the old political offices.
Correct.
All the political parties had their offices
Yeah.
out there and those got cleared out.
Yeah.
And now with this deal, the deal was actually around 2,700, 2,800 crores
Yes.
and an additional 600 was given because these guys
They didn't
said,
want
hey,
to
we are
really
not
have
going to
it.
give you more new offices somewhere else. You'll take
Yeah.
the money and figure it out for yourself. So that is how I think all the other political parties also got involved to some extent in this, and
But
where they are now
perhaps it's
saying,
a-
ki, hey, what is this? Is there some hanky-panky going on? Because why have you guys done this at 1,800 crores? What we feel is 1,800 crores less than the market value. But then again, this kind of a deal has never been done before. Two, there's no one really profiteering. It's been done between two government entities.
Correct.
So it's a different. I don't think you can really compare it to market
Yeah,
prices
I
either.
don't think there is anything of that sort. I agree with
Yeah.
you. It's just the thing is that we don't know what the market value is.
Correct.
Because yes, we can say this is the floor,
Yeah.
but could there have been something higher? We don't know unless
Yeah.
something really comes up.
Correct. Well, I mean, it just sort of reestablishes Nariman Point's attractiveness as a location and why it's
It is.
in high
All
demand.
that is correct, but I personally feel they should have done a public auction like what railways are doing in other
Correct.
places.
Yeah.
They do a public auction, maybe there would only be one bidder.
Yeah.
Correct.
And you can then say that, okay, we went down even below the reserve price because the one bidder
Because
didn't
there's
come up.
only one person or one
Whatever it
entity
is,
bidding.
could be.
you know.
Fair.
It would have looked far more transparent.
Fair. All right. My next question is about the White House's recent decision to change the H1B visa program. They have now slapped a $100,000 fee for new visa petitions effective from September 21st, 2025. Now, there's still a lot of confusion about who this applies to and what the details are still to be rolled out, or we're still to get some more clarity. So today I'd like to just generally talk to you about your perspective and how you see it impacting India's economy and perhaps even the real estate sector.
See, the way to look at it in general economic terms is, are goods and services the same?
Okay.
They are in a way. So suppose you are trading in goods. Each country has its own tariff barriers to protect their domestic industry,
Yeah.
so that something doesn't come in cheaper and kill the domestic manufacturing. Correct?
Yes.
So there's always the tussle between what sort of tariffs we should have, or no tariffs, or bilateral trade agreements, or multilateral trade agreements. Now, what we are discussing out here is what we call services.
Right.
H1B visa is nothing but a fee which you're putting because you're bringing somebody, a person, for his service from outside to inside a country. Similarly, when you talk about offshoring, is the same thing.
Right.
Your services that should have been done inside a country is being taken outside. Is offshoring. Correct? So all these services, how are they being taxed?
Right.
As of now, most of these services were out of the ambit.
Right.
You understand? So if you remember, before GST, like if you look at it domestically, most of services were outside the ambit.
Okay.
There was only the so-called sales tax, and there was works contract tax, but very few services were actually been under the tax ambit, and GST made it very wide and comprehensive that a service is also something which can be taxed, whether you're cutting my hair or tailoring or doing anything.
Correct.
So similarly, now at a global level, if you look at it, people will start looking at services also as to how to tax. Now this doesn't bode well for us, no doubt.
Correct. More than 70% of these
You understand?
H1B visas.
Now what happens is the services were being traded, it's easy to put a tax on it. Like suppose an Indian company in India was doing services for an American company in US and raising a bill, that would have been easy to determine. This is what I want to do. Just like I would have exported goods to you, I'm exporting services, and this is what you will charge me, and this is what you will pay. But if it is the same company offshoring,
Right.
here offshoring and GCCs are all the American company putting their center there and saying it is my own branch. And so I'm putting my services there because it's cheaper. And I'm from there, I'm sourcing. It's like, a large company like a Nike or a Louis Vuitton saying that I source from this company, this country or that country, my products.
Yeah.
They're not buying from that country. Maybe they just source it also. They might have their own factories there.
Yes.
So then what is the taxability of it?
Right.
You understand? Now, I think we are going to give you an idea. I think we are entering into an era of that. It is spooky, but it will be coming.
Okay.
And so we'll all have to be really careful and competitive to figure out as to how do we handle these taxes.
Right.
How do we really be able to get to be competitive again in spite of tariffs?
Right.
That is what I feel is the bottom question, rather than hope that the tariffs will disappear.
Correct.
So whether it's $100,000 or $1,000, or today it is $5,000, that is not the question. The question is the tariffs will be there.
How
It
do
will
we
not
cope
disappear.
with them?
Offshoring services will also start getting tariffed. They won't disappear. So we have to become more and more competitive. That's my... So I'm not wading into a controversy as to whether 5 should become 100 or it should have been only 10 and doubled. I'm just saying that this is here to stay. So it's time we look at it in a very different perspective.
So as you rightly pointed out, the H1B visa has helped Indians a lot. 70%, more than 70% of the users have been Indians who've benefited and gone from there. And so yes, this kind of law feels like a little bit of a direct attack on India and India's capabilities. But also one, yes, the world is changing, as I was pointing out, things will start becoming different as countries close ranks, close borders, stuff like that. But on the other hand, one also has to realize that some of these moves are kind of counterproductive. Like an H1B visa was literally the reason US was able to attract the best and brightest from all over the world. Now, by suddenly putting a huge entry barrier on that, you're no longer going to be able to do that. So the question is, now that they can't, who is going to cash in on it? Is it India? Will we be able to keep that talent here and provide enough opportunities for them? Is it a Middle East? Is it a Europe? Because there will be some places that will benefit from this. Because at the end of the day, one keeps saying, "Oh, this is a big hit on us," but yes, it is in a way, but also in a way, it is a big hit on them. Whether they
Right.
realize it or not, it is going to impact them. 70% workers is no joke. It's not a small amount of your working population.
Yeah.
So if with that much impact happening, I'm like, how will it affect our real estate? That remains to be seen. But everyone feels in 6 to 12 months it will only have positive impacts for India and Indian real
Correct.
estate.
Yeah,
It should
I
not
mean-
have a negative impact.
Yeah.
We might suddenly feel, hey, if the 50,000 tech guys from Bangalore and Hyderabad who were slated to go there are suddenly not able to go there and are going to add to the Bangalore traffic woes, how do we manage this? But the fact is, these are things that the government was already planning and
Right.
addressing. So now we might just have to up our pace. That 3-year infrastructure plan now might have to be done in 6 months to 12 months.
Yeah. Well, from the perspective of if as the world becomes more protectionist in nature, do we see maybe, but India having such a large talent pool, a lot of people feel that this might give an impetus to GCCs in India. We might see more of them coming up. We might see more international organizations, maybe US-based companies setting up an office in India if they can't bring the people over there. Do you feel that might?
No, it's bound to happen. As I said, in spite of tariffs and everything, is bound to happen.
Yeah.
Because, see, ultimately, whether you have tariffs or you don't have tariffs, globalization is here to stay. You can't
Correct.
ignore.
Yeah.
You understand? We can't ignore that China manufactures
Correct.
what we consume.
Yeah.
We can't ignore that and say that I will replicate China in the next 3 years.
Yes.
You understand? So, as long as you understand that, that it is here to stay, what happens is inefficiencies get driven out.
Right.
You cannot be inefficient. That's what I was trying to tell.
Yeah.
Because whether you like it or not, if you're inefficient with the tariff, without the tariff, it will balance out.
Correct.
You understand? Because there will be tariff all over.
Yeah.
The ultimate thing is, can you really protect an industry for its inefficiency? That is very difficult.
Right.
And that will happen also on the goods as well as on the services.
Right.
Because that is like standing against the tide. You know, it might have happened 50 years back,
Yeah.
but today it might not happen so easily.
Right.
Though we are trying, we are protecting certain industries
Yes.
because we believe it will impact our majority of the population, and that's correct.
Right.
But can it be continued and prolonged? No, I don't. I think that even the government understand that. You can
Right.
only have it for a certain period of time. So it's a race against time to figure out how you increase your pace, as he said, to figure out how do I get there quickly. Because can anything be inefficient? No.
Correct.
Even US cannot be inefficient by saying that I will pay 100,000 and, or I'll pay all the taxes and load it onto my consumer. That sooner or later that will break.
Right.
And neither can India be inefficient.
Yeah.
So it will slowly start equalizing, So whether you have tariffs or you don't have tariffs, if you have tariffs, you have just increased the cost base. All over, that means there will be tariffs put reciprocal and you have increased the cost base by 10%, 20%, 25%. That's all.
Not going
But
to
it will
reach
still be very strong. And if tariffs increase the cost, you're putting more emphasis on efficiency, because the entrepreneur is not going to squeeze his margin to say, I'll take 5% and sit at home.
Correct.
He will still want his margin.
Yeah.
So he will want more productivity out of the thing.
Yeah. All right. That's a wrap for this week's episode. Thank you so much for tuning in. Do share your thoughts and feedback in the comment section below. Follow us on our social media handles and hit the bell icon for regular notifications. Until next time, thank you so much for tuning in.